Rain tapped softly against the windows of the old classroom, dripping through a crack in the ceiling that no one had bothered to repair. Miss Elena Carter set down her worn chalk, her eyes lingering on the faces of her students. They were children of laborers and farmers, some with patched uniforms, others with shoes too small. But they listened to her with wide eyes, as if her voice could transport them away from poverty, if only for an hour. Alina's hair was tied back neatly, though a few strands had escaped to frame her tired face. Her salary barely covered her rent in the tiny attic she lived in, and more often than not she skipped her own meals to buy supplies for her class. Books, crayons, even chalk, all these she paid for herself. Still, she smiled as she closed the lesson. Teaching was her calling, even if it broke her. The children filed out into the rain, laughter echoing in the narrow corridor. Elena was left behind, wiping the blackboard clean. She glanced down at her shoes, the sole of the left one had started to peel. "Another thing I can't afford to fix," she muttered. It was then that the heavy sound of polished shoes echoed in the hallway. She turned, startled. A tall man stood at the doorway, sharply dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his presence seemed to command the air around him. "Miss Carter." His deep voice carried authority. "Yes, that's me," Elena replied, instantly self-conscious of the chalk dust on her skirt. The man stepped closer. "I'm Alexander Graves." The name hit her like a wave. Alexander Graves, the elusive millionaire who owned half the properties in the city. His face had graced business magazines, his wealth the subject of gossip columns. But what was he doing in her humble classroom? Before she could ask, two little boys peeked out from behind him. Twins, no older than 7. They had the same stormy gray eyes as their father, though softer, more vulnerable. Their shirts were neatly pressed, but their expressions carried a weight children should never bear. Elena's heart softened instantly. "Boys," Alexander said firmly, "this is Miss Carter. She may be your new teacher." Elena blinked. "Maybe." Alexander's gaze locked with hers. His eyes were sharp, assessing, as if he were evaluating not just her teaching but her very soul. "I've heard about your dedication. My sons need more than just a governess. They need guidance, stability." He paused, then added, almost reluctantly, "They need a mother's presence." The words caught in Elena's chest. "I don't understand," she whispered. Alexander straightened, his jaw tense. "I don't waste time, Miss Carter. My wife passed away 2 years ago. Since then, my sons have had everything money can buy, except love. I cannot give them what they need most. That's why I'm here." Elena's lips parted, shocked. Was this man truly suggesting, "I need a mother for my sons," he said firmly. Then his voice dropped, softer, almost fragile, "and from what I've learned about you, you need a home." The silence stretched between them. Elena's mind spun. She had dreamed of stability, a roof without leaks, a life without hunger. But marriage, to a stranger, to a man like him. She turned to the twins. One clutched his brother's hand tightly, staring at her with pleading eyes. They were so small, so lost. Her heart ached for them. But Alexander was not finished. "This is not a romantic proposal, Miss Carter. I do not believe in fairy tales. What I'm offering is an arrangement. You will have comfort, security, and my sons will have the motherly care they are desperate for." His bluntness stung. He wasn't offering love. He was offering a transaction. Elena swallowed hard. "And what about you, Mr. Graves? What do you gain?" For a moment, the mask of the unshakable millionaire faltered. A flicker of pain crossed his eyes. "I gain peace of mind. I can run my empire without worrying that my children are starved for affection." The rain outside grew heavier, beating against the glass like a drum. Elena's heart raced. Everything about this moment felt unreal. Only hours ago, she had been worrying about how to stretch her last $10 until payday. Now, a man of unimaginable wealth was offering her not just a home, but a family. Yet the conditions chilled her. No romance, no promises of love, just a bargain. The twins stepped forward shyly. One of them tugged at her skirt. "Miss Carter," he said softly, "do you like stories? Mama used to read us stories before bed." Her throat tightened. "Yes, sweetheart, I love stories." The boy smiled faintly, though his eyes still held sadness. In that fragile expression, Elena saw what Alexander could not, the raw need for tenderness, for warmth, for the unconditional love only a mother could give. She knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from the boy's forehead. "I'd read you stories every night if I could," she whispered. When she looked up, Alexander's eyes were on her. There was something unreadable in them now. Perhaps hope, perhaps fear. I don't expect an answer today, he said at last. But consider my proposal carefully. You would never want again. And my sons, his voice cracked for the first time. My sons would finally have a chance to smile again. With that, he turned and ushered the boys out, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Elena stood frozen, her heart pounding. Outside, the rain poured harder, flooding the street like tears the heavens themselves could not contain. She leaned against her desk, dizzy with conflicting emotions. This wasn't how proposals were supposed to happen. There had been no flowers, no declarations of love. Just a raw, desperate plea from a man who didn't know how to heal his own children. And yet, as she replayed the look in the twins' eyes, she knew one thing for certain: this decision would change her life forever. That night, Elena sat in her attic room staring at the water stains on the ceiling. Alexander's words echoed in her head. I need a mother for my sons. And you need a home. She pressed her hands against her face. What kind of man proposed marriage like a business contract? And yet, she couldn't shake the memory of the twins' sad eyes. Their tiny voices had clung to her heart like ivy on stone. Her landlord's angry knock broke her thoughts. Miss Carter, the rent's 2 weeks late. Pay up or leave. Tears burned in her eyes. Tomorrow she would have no place to stay. No classroom, no home, nothing. Alexander's offer loomed larger than ever. It wasn't love, but it was salvation, for her and, perhaps, for those boys. By dawn, with rain still trickling outside, she made her decision. 2 days later, Elena stood in front of the Graves estate, her hands trembling. The mansion rose like a fortress, its marble pillars and endless windows reflecting the sunlight. She had never seen such grandeur, and for a moment she considered running away. But then the doors opened, and the twins ran out, their faces alight with something she hadn't seen before: hope. You came, one of them shouted, hugging her legs tightly. Alexander appeared behind them, his expression unreadable, though a flicker of relief crossed his face. Miss Carter. He paused. Or should I say, Mrs. Graves. Her breath caught. Are you certain about this? His jaw tightened. I've never been more certain. The ceremony was quiet, held in the estate's library with only a judge, 2 witnesses, and the boys watching. With wide eyes. There were no flowers, no vows of love. Just a signature on paper, a ring slipped onto her finger, and Alexander's curt nod. It felt surreal, stepping into marriage like one might step into a contract. But when the twins each grabbed one of her hands, Elena's heart whispered that maybe this wasn't the wrong choice after all. Life in the Graves mansion was unlike anything Elena had known. The dining table could seat 20, though most nights it was just the 4 of them. Servants bustled through hallways, and chandeliers sparkled like stars. But wealth couldn't mask the emptiness. At dinner, Alexander sat stiffly at the head of the table, speaking little. He watched his sons with concern but seemed powerless to connect with them. They, in turn, glanced at him cautiously, as though fearing they might disappoint him. It was Elena who filled the silence, asking about their day, laughing at their jokes, gently correcting their table manners. She read them stories at night, tucked them into bed, and listened when they whispered about missing their mother. Slowly, the house began to change. The boys smiled more. They ran through the halls with laughter instead of hushed footsteps. Even the servants whispered that the mansion felt alive again. And Alexander, he watched. Often, he stood at the doorway as Elena read to the twins, his face softened by shadows. Sometimes she caught his gaze lingering on her, as though he were seeing something he hadn't expected. But walls as high as his mansion surrounded his heart. He never allowed himself to step closer. One evening, after the twins had gone to bed, Elena found herself in the grand library. She traced her fingers along the spines of leather-bound books, marveling at the world they contained. You've brought laughter back into this house. She turned sharply. Alexander stood behind her, hands in his pockets, his eyes fixed on her. I only did what any teacher would, she said softly. No, he replied, shaking his head. You did what I could not. Silence stretched between them. The crackle of the fireplace filled the air. Elena's heart thudded in her chest. Why do you keep yourself apart from them? She asked finally. His expression hardened. Because love is weakness, Miss Carter. I've seen how it destroys. I built my empire by being ruthless. My wife, she was the only softness in my life. Losing her nearly broke me. I can't afford to break again. Elena's eyes stung. And yet, your sons need that very softness. Without it, they will grow up rich but empty. His jaw clenched, but his eyes betrayed a storm inside him. Alexander, she whispered, daring to use his first name, you're not made of stone. You don't have to be. He turned away sharply, leaving her with the fire in her pounding heart. Weeks passed. The arrangement had settled into routine, but Elena felt a growing ache. She loved the twins deeply, they were already her sons in every way that mattered. But Alexander, he was a fortress she could not breach. One night, after reading a story, the younger twin asked, Mama, do you love Papa? Elena froze. Mama. The word was so natural on his lips it nearly broke her. She smiled gently. Why do you ask? Because if you love him, the boy whispered, then maybe he won't be so sad anymore. Her throat tightened. Go to sleep, sweetheart, she whispered, kissing his forehead. But as she left the room, tears slipped down her cheeks. The turning point came unexpectedly. One rainy evening, the kind that reminded Elena of the day he first appeared in her classroom, Alexander arrived home visibly shaken. His usually perfect suit was damp, his hands trembling slightly. What happened? She asked, alarmed. There was an accident, he muttered. The boy's car. Their driver lost control. Her blood ran cold. Where are they? At the hospital. They're safe. Minor injuries. But, his voice broke for the first time, raw and terrified. For a moment, I thought I'd lost them. And I realized, all my walls, all my wealth, none of it would matter if they were gone. Or if you were. Before she could speak, he gripped her shoulders, his gray eyes fierce with desperation. Elena, I was wrong. This was never just an arrangement. You've become the heart of this family. I see it in my sons, I feel it in myself. I tried to keep love out, but it found its way in anyway. And now, I can't imagine life without you. Her breath hitched. This was the confession she had never dared hope for. I love you, he whispered, voice cracking. I love you, Elena. Please, don't just be their mother. Be my wife in truth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. All the walls she had built around her own heart crumbled. I love you too, Alexander, she whispered. From the moment I saw the pain in your eyes, I wanted to heal it. Not because of your wealth, not because of your mansion, but because behind all that steel, there is a man who just wants to love and be loved. His arms pulled her close, and for the first time, their lips met, not in a contract, not an obligation, but in a kiss that sealed their hearts together. Months later, the mansion was transformed. Laughter rang through its halls daily. Alexander no longer watched his sons from a distance but joined them, racing through gardens, reading stories by Elena's side. And Elena, once the poor teacher struggling to survive, now had more than a home. She had a family, a husband who finally let himself love, and two sons who called her mama without hesitation. One evening, as they sat together under the stars, Alexander squeezed her hand. I once thought love was weakness, he said quietly. But now I know, it's the only true strength. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder, smiling as the twins played nearby. Yes, she whispered, love is what makes us whole. And for the first time in years, Alexander Graves, the man who had built an empire yet lost his heart, laughed freely, knowing that his family was finally complete.